Hi, this is David with Think Indy Review. I'm going to just take a minute to talk about what the purpose of this YouTube channel is going to be about. Essentially, we're going to be reviewing indie comics, mostly indie comics. This may include some Image books. It may include some Dark Horse books. But for the most part, we're going to stick with local, independently created comics. Some of you may have remembered me from a couple years ago. I tried to do Think Indy magazine, and I tried to do a Kickstarter for that to help promote indie comics to a wider audience. And my passion is still there to promote it, and I realized quite recently that why not make a YouTube channel and start documenting the indie comics that I enjoy, and and see if I can come up with a decent video that talks about comics. People could share videos. I don't have to print it. It keeps going. People can search for it and find it. So it just dawned on me that maybe a video blog would be a video channel would be the best way to go about doing this. It's free, and all I have to do is spend the time producing it, and it's probably not as labor intensive as putting out a magazine. So here we are. This is the trial run, first episode, whatever you want to call it. And I'm basically I'm going to talk about a little bit about why I love indie comics. And I've been reading comics most of my life, and there was a certain point when I started reading it, and I just decided that I had to start checking out other things. You know, I was reading Spider-Man a lot as a kid, and some of you may remember me telling the story about how I bought almost every issue of this Maximum Carnage 14-part series. And that kind of offended me because I spent all this money getting these issues, and the characters almost ended up in the same place that they started at. You could have cut out 80% of the book and you would have still had the story. And I was a poor teenager, didn't have any money, and I had to go chase down all these books in 1 month or 2 months. So it's always been a bit of a thorn in my side about that particular story arc, and it kind of led me to saying, of course I've been making my own comic books since 2004, and I'm up to about 12 issues if you count the one I'm working on now, and the which is issue 0 of Straw Man, and also the color special. So that's about 12 issues. And I want to do these reviews to talk about, to help promote indie creators, not necessarily to tear them down or anything. It's easy. I mean, I'm going to be critical of the work, but I'm not saying don't buy it. I'm not saying don't check it out. I'm probably going to review things that I like, but I'm going to talk about things. I'm going to be honest and say, well, this is where I think this could be improved. And I may be totally wrong, but I think, with the work that I've put out over the years, that I have some insight as to maybe where things could go better, or maybe where things blow my mind, like, wow, I've never seen that before. So I'm really interested in seeing how far I can take this. But if I'm reviewing it, it's probably worth buying. I'm going to be reviewing based off of a 4-tier system, which would be G for general audiences, T for teen, mature, and also probably an adult rating, but preferably won't be recommending adult comics. But if I happen to come across one and I think it's really worth mentioning, then I'll give it that rating. I just want to let you know where the scale would be if someone sends someone in and yeah, it's good, but here's the caveat with it. But I just wanted to talk in general about my love for indie comics. Like I said, I've been making it since 2004, and I've really gotten to know a lot of people that I really enjoy, and I've really got a lot out of books. That there's a whole world of comics out there that just aren't Marvel and DC. And you say, what's so bad about Marvel and DC? Well, they keep putting out the same thing all the time. I mean, the story comes back to where it was from the beginning. Aunt May was created in the 60s. By this point, she would be, let's say it's been 50 years since Aunt May has been around. So if she was in her 50s, that would make her 100 now, and she would probably be dead. So that's just not possible within the story. Yet, as far as I know, Aunt May is still around, and Spider-Man is still Peter Parker, ever unaging college student. So, whatever he's up to now. But like, I haven't read a Marvel comic book since probably 2009, 2008, maybe 2010. The last big story arc I read was New Ways to Die, and then I picked up maybe one Scotty Young cover of Spider-Man, and then I think the very last book I bought was Tom Scioli's Hail Hydra #2, which was pretty cool. Anyway, so I started going to Space Con in Ohio, just almost annually, and I've discovered so many wonderful books since going, and I've kept most of them. And I'm going to do this video to kind of promote the work that I've seen and help promote my friends. Some of them are my friends, some of them I hardly know, but I really want to do a good job and talk about the books. I have, like I said, about 10 years, 12 years experience creating comics. So I'm going to review these books, and I'm going to be honest about what I think. And I'm going to say, well, the graphic design stinks, or this really surprises me how well done this was. And, there's going to be praise and there's going to be criticism. But if I'm reviewing the book, more than likely, I just want you to pick up the book, because indie comics creators need to have more attention to them. They spend a lot of their time scraping around the barrel, trying to make a living, and they still manage to put out something that they love. So if you get a chance, support your local indie comics. I mean, every city's got one. Every city's got a creator. Go to a comic book shop, ask if the worker there has somebody creating a comic book, and more than likely you'll hear a yes. So it's time that I think we need to move. I think the medium needs to mature. I think indie comics is the way to go, and I think in the future we're going to see more and more successful indie comic stories. I mean, you've heard of TMNT, you've heard of Bone, and I mean there's little success stories here and there, and it's going to be fascinating seeing this stuff come up in the future. So get on board while you can, and let's help support some indie comics. Anyway, today we're going to be reviewing Michael Neno's The Signifiers, which is a tribute to the 60s Marvel Comics all the way, and it's going to be fun talking about it. I met Michael Neno at SpaceCon in 2010, I think? 2012, this year. Yeah, I met Michael Neno this year. I may have met him before, but last year I picked up a copy of the Signifiers, and hadn't got around to it, and I thought, I want to know what my honest opinion is. I want to write it down and record it and get it on the web, see what people think about his book, and see if it could drum up some sales for Michael, because it's hands down one of the best indie comics I've seen, and I just wanted to make this video to talk about it, and I'll be talking about other books in the upcoming video. So sit back and enjoy, and we're going to talk about the issue. I just finished reading issue 1 of Michael Neno's The Signifiers. And like I said earlier, it's not my intent to create this show with the purpose of belittling other people's work, so let's start off with the stuff that I really liked. Hands down, The Signifiers has some of the best artwork I've ever seen in an indie comic. Michael Neno's artwork is reminiscent of Kirby, but it sometimes has a classic and unique quality of its own. His use of solid blacks adds a lot of heft to the pages. Ah, Kirby Crackle. Don't leave home without it. On page 13 you can really see what I'm talking about. There's a certain amount of organic looseness that looks nothing like Kirby, but still feels like it was done by the same artist. On page 14 we see this accomplished to great effect, the lighting on an open road in the middle of the night. It's incredibly well executed. It's not all Kirbyisms in this book. Neno also borrows a bit from Ditko as well. Check out this funky ad in the middle of the book. It's fun and exciting,
just like the old funny books should be. One of the stylistic things I can really admire are the open panel borders that he sprinkles throughout the book. It's something that caught my attention because it was done so well. In fact, I may incorporate this technique into my work. The details in this book are astonishing. Look at these little numbers on the side of the pages. You'll find these things in older comics too. I'm not sure what they were used for, but I couldn't find any information on Google about them. Check out that beautiful back cover. The overall package seeps with nostalgia. If that's your thing, run, don't walk, and get this comic right away. But let's talk about some of the weak areas of the book. First, the front cover. Despite having some nostalgic elements to it, it doesn't really grab me. I think the book's logo is the biggest culprit here. First of all, it just doesn't have any heft to it. You've got this book steeped in the 60s Marvel Comics ideology, and the logo just doesn't reflect that. In my opinion, it should be big and bold, just like what the rest of the cover promises inside the book. Then you've got this multicolor repeating image that doesn't complement the color schemes that are established below. Now I'm nitpicking, and that's because I'd really like to see this comic book take off. There's just so many things that are done well in the book that I'd hate for potential customers to be scared off by the front cover. On that note, the bottom quarter of the page sports a great Kirby-esque drawing, and it screams old school. Now let's talk about the contents. One of the problems with the story is that you have no idea what's going on. It's sort of like a collage of different scenes that are supposed to add up to one big thing. This kind of writing can be effective if the audience is reassured throughout the comic that it's all leading up to something big. Problem is, there is no narration or setting. One thing Lee did really well when working with Kirby is that he knew how to make big concepts accessible to a wider audience. On the first page of the book, we have this nice splash page of a terrified humanoid face, lacking any pupils. It's attention-grabbing and sets the mood and style for the next few pages. But here we also run into our first storytelling problem. There's no title, no narration, and no credits. Every old-school Marvel book would open with something like this. Obviously, from the expression on the character's face, we know something bad is happening, but all we know is a face. Not a name, not a personality, and we don't know the circumstances for how the character got here. I felt lost reading the next few pages. I didn't know what was going on or who to root for. What compounded the problem is that it immediately went for the weird. I'm saying if you're relying on the familiar to hook your audience, then you should follow through with that. If you're going to be weird, tell us why it's important to the story. I did enjoy a bit in the story when he uses a dentist to retrieve some lost memories from a guy's head. That was intriguing and makes me want to know what happens later on with that information. The issue is 48 pages and contains 3 stories. The third story gets the nostalgia splash page right, and it's definitely the most accessible of the 3 stories. We have a splash page, dialogue, credits, and a narration that gives a little backstory on the character. It's a perfect homage to classic Marvel Comics, and it works incredibly well. In fact, I found myself enjoying the last story quite a bit. There's danger and excitement, and we automatically root for Landlark as he makes his escape. I suppose it's human nature to cheer for the underdog. However, at the end, we run into some weird stuff again. It doesn't keep me from enjoying the work, but it kind of feels like the story had nowhere to go. Overall, I think the main problem is that there's no normal character that we can grasp onto as audience members. It's essential to have a character or narrator that informs the audience as to what's going on and why it's important. I give the Signifiers number 1 7 out of 10. I'm looking forward to Signifiers number 2 with the hope that some of these plot threads come together to a satisfying conclusion. That's all we have today on Think Indie Reviews. Be sure to leave comments below and to subscribe to our channel. Next time we'll be reviewing The Inevitables number 1 and Oogly Studio Presents. Until next time.